Good morning, everyone. It's 9:10, so I want to get started. Hope everybody's doing well, despite the air condition. It's foggy here in Pullman. I have turned every light that could be turned on in my office here, opened all the windows, but it still is a bit dark. I hope you are all doing well, and I'm sure it's probably quite similar in other parts of Washington where some of you are, but I know the vast majority of you are in Pullman. So stay indoors today. Our class is not affected by this. Online classes are going on as they should, but other things are closed. So if there is some grocery you need to do or any other thing, let it wait. So leave on what you have and stay indoors. We will continue, and we are now in week 4. We are on the 4th week, and again, we are again on schedule. Today's lecture is going to be not on slides, but I wanted to point out a couple of things, and I thought the slide would be a better way of doing it. Otherwise, the lecture will be code. So we're going to be looking at code and demonstrations around it. Data wrangling is our topic. So we will get started, and I'm going to use this slide just for pointing out a couple of updates. But we're all online now. I hope some of you who have just joined will be able to tune in. I'm not sure if I did unmute myself, but for 3 or 4 minutes, I did play some music. Did anybody hear the last 1 minute or so? Can somebody give me a thumbs up?
Yes, the quality was not great, however, very.
All right, okay. So the music was good, but the quality was not good. This was not the best way to play it, but I'm going to try. Now that I know what the music profile of the class is, I'll try to play 1 minute or so, but I'm not sure how good it would be, but I'll try to find out a way. So we will do our warm-up question, just like we do every time. I was impressed by the variety of interests you have in music, and I would like to do a very simple one today. And this is going to require me to write very few things at the end when I do the chat analytics. I would like to know whether you are a coffee person or a tea person, and whether you have had your cup for the day. So I'm a coffee person, a tea person, and I've had my cup or not yet. That will be the answer. And Ben will be the person who is going to type today's warm-up question. So Ben, when you are ready, go ahead, type the question. The warm-up question for the day is, are you a tea person or a coffee person? And did you have your cup for the day? I am a coffee person. I had my cup, and actually I had 2. And I would like to know, there could be some rare exceptions where people are not coffee or tea drinkers. You could say neither. I know there are some who would drink chocolate instead. And there are some who would like to have tea in the afternoon and coffee in the morning. My question is for those who want to start the day off the right way. And so the morning habit is what I am after. Coffee person or tea person, and I have had my cup yet. That is a very simple warm-up question for the day. All right, so I'm going to use this slide to make a few updates, and then we will start with the topic for the day on data wrangling. I have finished grading assignment 1, and I have posted on Blackboard, and by now, all of you must have heard back from me. It took me longer than I thought. This is a bit unusual compared to the remaining 4 assignments that you will have. This is more about reflection on yourself. You tell me about your data science profile. There is no wrong profile or right profile. You give me the profile of yourself. And very many of you have taken the time to tell me about your background, to tell me about, especially when it comes to domain expertise, where you have acquired it. And every time I saw that, I have very much appreciated it. I'd also asked you to give a projection on where you would like to see by the end of the course. That is for you, and it's also a helpful thing for me to know. So by and large, the class has done very well. You took the problem seriously, and you did a good job on the part that is about yourself. The other part was on your reflection on an important article we discussed, and we spent a good time. And there are variations. Some of you have had very thoughtful, good discussion around the questions. There were 3 questions that were asked. You gave, and some of you were a little bit superficial, but by and large, I was very happy with what I saw. It took me time because I needed to go through and understand them. The other assignments, whatever we will have in the coming, will be of a different nature. They will be right and wrong. There will be things that would be, that would make you do on a data, and you're asked depending on what topic we are covering, and they will be mostly graded by Helen. So it will take more time. We'll be careful, but this will be the way in which things would come. So you've seen how rubrics are set up and points you get around them and so on. So if you have any questions about how assignment was going, as far as I'm concerned, everything went well and you did what you're supposed to do. And this is also a boost for how things will be for you in terms of accumulating points. Depending on whether you are a 475 or a 575 student, the assignments would carry a certain percentage and you know them well. The weekend also saw submission of assignment 2. It was first on Friday midnight, and then there was an extension given because of how things were on Friday on campus, both in terms of air quality and also other power outage problems. So some of you have made use of that, and I went and changed the submission deadline. So whoever has submitted after midnight on Friday, you're fine. And so there was nobody that I saw was late, so there was no concern, and everyone who is taking this class for credit have submitted, and Helen will get started to grade them, and you will hear back. So that will take care of 2 assignments, and there will be 3 remaining. Because we're talking about assignments, I can just go ahead and tell you the 3rd assignment will come on Wednesday, and it will depend, or it will be on a topic that we'll be discussing this week. For those of you who need it, there is a Python tutorial tomorrow. Helen will run it from 3 to 4:30 p.m. and you will get a Zoom link for it on Blackboard posted. So just wanted to remind you that. Okay, I want us to see where we're headed. We finished 3 weeks. You know what topics we have covered. The week we are in is week 4 now, and our topic is data wrangling. Usually, or in the last couple of years, I have taught this course, the last 2 offerings of it, I should say. I devote 3 lectures, one on data manipulation, one on relational data, things that have to do something that would require you to work with databases, and you've got some relational data to work with, and one on TiDR. This year, I'm going to have 2, but I'm going to have a 3rd one that was one of my dreams to do before, and I have succeeded in getting. I would like to invite somebody from industry to give a lecture, a guest lecture on data wrangling, based on what we have done but what they do daily and the kind of tools that they would use. And so I have secured, and I was waiting for this one to happen. Now it is settled for Friday, September 18. There will be a guest lecture on data wrangling by a data scientist at IHME. That is the Institute for Health and Metrics, whatever the EI was. Institute is the I, and the E, I forgot what it was. But that is a UW affiliated based in Seattle, but it has become a big news now. Some of you might have heard it in connection with what is happening with COVID. There's some great work there. So this will be given by a recent graduate from WSU who is working there as a data scientist, and that person has taken this class. So I'm very excited about that, and this will be a useful thing to have. I have always wanted to have some guest lectures that represent some things that would be of value added, and so because this person has taken this class, that will be a great advantage to us. So you can look forward to that. So for that reason, I'm going to try to find 2 lectures, but if we needed a 3rd one, we will go and use the week after for having to cover that. So the topic for this week is data wrangling. We've got 2 lectures lined up for today and Wednesday. On Friday, the same topic, but we'll have a guest lecture. Because we are having things online now, this has become convenient, and so this person will be teaching the course or giving the lecture from Seattle without leaving their place. The week after, and I wanted to give you this so that you are clear with our plans and also know why I have moved this one. I have talked about this one earlier. A data visualization in the syllabus was something that was delayed after we have finished all our machine learning topics and comes very late. Based on what I have seen in the survey, based on what I would like to see happen in your project, is I want to bring that forward. So the data visualization topic will be the week after. Week 5, we will be doing that topic, and I will have, usually I will have 3 or 4, and we still will have 3 or 4 lectures, but I have tried to show you what topics will be coming up next week. Just the same argument that I gave for the data wrangling one, I would also like to have somebody who does visualization as a research area give a lecture, a guest lecture, and that's going to happen on Friday, September 25th. I'll be there on both days. This is not a guest lecture where you'll be left alone, but this is going to enhance what we are going to be learning. This is going to be given by a professor at the medical school in Spokane, a collaborator of mine who has done some work on geographic information systems and visualizations that have to do especially with maps. And one of the reasons I want to have both of these guest lectures is not only to enhance this and for you to have a lecture that was given by somebody practicing, but also with something that is going to be a generator for an idea for your semester projects. So on week 6, I don't want to talk about the topics there. One of the things that will happen there, either on a Wednesday or on a Friday, is going to be the day when I would dedicate a lecture on what semester projects would be, where the ideas that I have will be given to you, or you come up with your own ideas. So the 2 lectures that will be given here most likely will be a generator for an idea if you do not have something that is you are working on. And by now you have also started to know each other relatively okay in some ways, and so you have built up at least some interests. So this is where we are headed, and this is the only thing I wanted to use the slide for, and we are going to be using otherwise going to go. For what we are going to be talking about today, I have already posted the material on Blackboard. And so if you go to lectures, contents, then there is data wrangling for the day, September 14, and I have uploaded there 2 files. One is the R Markdown file, and the other one is a PDF file. What I will be working with today will be to use the R Markdown file. The PDF is something that you could use as a note for later reference. In addition to that, I have also posted quite a number of cheat sheets, but I put them, instead of putting them every time we need in a lecture, I put them in one place, and that's called the resources folder. And there is, we already had an R resources file, and then we had one cheat sheet on R Markdown, but now I have added a bunch, and all of these are related to data wrangling. One that we will be start talking about today, and the other something that we'll be talking about in the future. So there is plenty of material given there. What you need to do today is be with me and focus on what we will discuss around Dplyr using the R Markdown file that I will be using. And so you have notes in a way that you could rely on the PDF that is posted there. So for those who follow along, the notes are there thanks to the R Markdown file that has generated the PDF. If you want to write notes, then that would be a good place to do too. Last lecture was a typed up note that was posted, and some of you told me you appreciated that very much. In fact, one of the examples I gave about the real world was air quality, and we saw the need for it. And WSU, if you don't know, has got one of the good laboratories on atmospheric research, and so they have their visualization that you could see that they map out how things would look like. Hopefully it would improve, but that's one place to go to, actually one of the best places to go to see how the air quality is in our area and more generally in the Northwest. All right, this is what I wanted to get started before I jump into going through the data wrangling discussion today. Anybody has got any quick questions for me? Okay, if you have gone to, when you get the chance, you will see that there is a PDF file that's 15 pages long that this R Markdown is going to be translated into. What I would like to do, and hopefully this one is big enough for you to see, is explain this using the R Markdown, and every now and then I will run the code when it is needed, but you will have a typed up version, just like you would have submitted your assignments when you see the PDF version of this one. So what's Dplyr? This is a tool for a library, and some of you I know would like to work both for the assignment or for projects and things like that in Python. This is a place where I have, as I mentioned last time, you would benefit by working with R, and specifically with a particular library, a particular package called Dplyr. Dplyr, this is how it is pronounced. It's written Dplyr. Plyr was the original one, something that came earlier, and this one has got some additional things to it. And so it's a tool. This is a place where you would benefit. Among the cheat sheets I have seen, and since I'm talking about Python now, is eventually or more recently, people have needed, saw the need for having to interoperate between Python and R. And this is something that maybe many of you are completely new to. And so now you can work from Python with R, and a way to work with that one is a package RStudio has developed called Reticulate, I think it is called. So I have put a cheat sheet for Reticulate. For those of you who are more heavily using Python and would like to still be using the Dplyr functionality and other, R-related things that would do. So both Plyr and Dplyr are alternatives for what you would have done with standard R when it comes to exploring data and manipulate data, to transform data. This is one of the things around data wrangling. There is something about having to make data tidy, which will be our topic for next time. But Dplyr is a tool, a library for having to make data exploration, data manipulation faster. You could do things in standard R, but you will make it faster, especially when you work with data frames. And you would also have much less code to write and much more efficient performance. And so for that reason, it is something that I highly recommend, and we will spend some time discussing on. I'm going to talk about functionalities. One of the people who have advocated this and the author of this library is also the author of the R for Data Science book I told you. And the chapter I reminded you to read last Friday was on Dplyr, is that same person who wrote that book and this library. One of the philosophies around it is to use things that are easy to read, both as a function name, but also in terms of syntax. And so GGVs, Dplyr, and a number of other libraries in R are written with that in mind. And so there is a way to think about this one that is organized around 5 verbs: filter, select, arrange, mutate, and summarize. These are the 5 verbs we'll go through today, and we'll see how they function. But they follow the same syntax. The words are written in the form of a verb, and you would see what action they will take and what results you would get. These are all about manipulations around data frames, where you have things in terms of organized in terms of rows and columns. We also would get a chance to work with databases. Sometimes the data frame that you would work with, especially when it comes to actual research that you do, or when you are working in an industry, your data frames would come from databases. By databases here, I mean relational databases. And so there is also some functionality in Dplyr that would make work with databases, including things that are going to make you go and get a database that is remotely located in another server, for example. And so that is another functionality included there. And when you work with databases, relational databases, you have a need to join them. Those of you who have taken a database class would know what these are, and there are different kinds of joins: inner join, left join, semi-join, and anti-join. This is what I mean by the relational data topic, and that will be a topic on its own. If we get a chance for a third topic on data wrangling, we will talk about that. We will also use today's discussion to look at not only those 5 verbs, but also some things called window functions. These are things that you would use for ranking, for offsets, and things like that. And they are going to be demonstrated through a couple of examples I would show today. And there is a little bit of a note that talks about this version and some later versions that have come. This one is from 2014. So when you follow me along now when you work on your own on the R Markdown file that you have done here, you will find out that we will be working with a data set. This data set is called H flights, and it is a data set on flights from the Houston airport in 2011. Thankfully, it was some years ago, and so we really have some good data and things like that that would be of interest. I'm not sure what is happening these days, so there probably isn't much. much data flying flights out of Houston in 2020, especially the last couple of months. But this is a data set that is there. What you will know, and I will be running some of the codes here, and I will be running it and if you have noticed how I have put the R Markdown file here, I have, instead of using 4 windows, which is usually what you will see on your own, I have chosen the console to be on the right, and I have got the bigger one where the code is displayed on the left. And every time there is something that I want to run, I'm going to use this one, so you will see a display. The PDF file will have the displayed code in it, and so when you read through it, you will understand. So one thing you would know when you run it on for yourself, this one is your code may complain saying hflights is installed, so make sure that you install it. I have installed it, so I have it here, but you will be asked, and when you are asked to do that, you say install packages hflights, and it will go there and get it, and you will be able to do what I am going to be showing you today. Okay, so we are going to be every now and then run code, but otherwise I will walk you through this, and you will see what is going to happen, and our goal is to be familiar with Dplyr, and we use the opportunity to also look at some window functions as we go along. All right, let me see if there is anybody who's got some questions for me. Okay, I think these are all things that are. Okay, so Smith has asked if Dplyr is an alternative. What I mean by alternative here is something that you could do in standard. In fact, most of the code that I will show you now will show you how you would do things in standard R and how you would do things when it is Dplyr, if that was your question. Okay, so I'm going to assume that this one has been done now, and we're going to look at least what the hflights data set would look like. So I'm going to run it, and so you will see now, and then you will see on the right how the code, what piece of code I have run, and you see this is a data set that has got some information about flights. I'm looking at the hflights data set now, just the head of it. And so it is year, month, day of week. These are all flights, and what departure time it was, what arrival time it was, what unique, the carrier name, and things like that. There is a way to, this is a data frame. You can make this one to be printed in a nice way. So this one right now doesn't have, this is the standard data frame. When you print it, it looks like this. If you want to print it nicely in a way where you could fit, for example, all the columns that your window allows you and see some additional information, there is a data structure or functionality called local data frame that you can create. And so we could, and that is obtained by having to call this function called TBL, that is local data frame, and you can give it a file name, TBLDF, and we are going to give it a new name now. hflights was our original data set, and we are going to call now, create a variable that's a local data frame just for the purpose of printing nicely. And so that is called flights. And now you can see when I do flights, then you can see the difference between how it was printed before and how it is printed now. You get a little bit of information about the data set in general, and it gets a nicer format, including what data types it has for each column. All right, so we have at least become familiar with what the data set is, and this one has printed the first 10 columns of the data set, and I'm sure it has got some information here that will tell you it has got 22,007 or 227,496 rows and 21 columns is how much it has. And of course, it didn't display all of it, but it displayed the first 10. If you wanted to see more, you can specify how many columns you would, how many rows you would want to see, and that is done by writing print, and then you write the name, the local data frame, and how many rows you would like it to be displayed, in this case 20. And so we can see that happen if we run this piece of code, and now you can see what that looks like. All right, we've explored a little bit of the data set, and we have at least become familiar with a local data frame and nice printing about it. Let's start our walkthrough of those 5 verbs. The first one is called filter. This is a function that we're working with data manipulation now. We're working with data frames. We're working with rows and columns. And so the first verb we have in Dplyr is called filter, and what it would do is among the rows, it's going to find the ones that would satisfy whatever criteria we give it. So we are going to subset. We are going to subset the rows instead of the entire data set. Now we're going to select certain things that would satisfy whatever it is that we wanted it to be achieved. That's what filter does. Keep rows matching criteria. So I'm going to show you for this one and a few other, almost all of the examples that we would see have their standard R version and then whatever is done in Dplyr. If we were to, and you probably have done a little bit of this in your assignment too, not much, but a little bit of this. If you were to find, you have got a data frame and you wanted to select some things that would satisfy certain criteria that you want to set, you could write something like this. So the base R, for example, if we wanted to find out what flights were in 1st of January, all the flights that took off in the 1st of January, we would say we go to flights, and then we would choose the rows that have got flight and the variable name with a $sign, months equals to 1, and that's a condition, flights where the day of month is equal to 1. This is what we are expecting of the variables to happen, what the columns should satisfy. This is the criteria, and we wanted to select every row that does that, and so we put a colon, a comma rather, and then we leave it empty. So that means now we have selected all the rows where this condition is satisfied. That will be the way to write it in standard R. And if we were to run this, we will get the same result. Let me actually run it so you can see what happens. And so we've got some results. And so here is all the flights that have happened on January 1st. This was the way to write it in standard R. The Dplyr way to write it, and this one would make you kind of remember some syntax and make you go back and forth in reading what you wanted. Look at how this would look like when you do it in Dplyr. The syntax always is to have the verb, the function that you are calling. That will be what you would write, and in parentheses you would have the data frame that you are operating on, and then the conditions. And so in this case, we're going to filter. The data set that we're working with is flights. Remember, this is a local one, the one that prints nicely. And then after that, after we gave the name of the data frame, we give what the conditions are. Our condition is we don't need now the $sign. We know what data frame we are working on. So we just write months equals to 1, comma, day of month equals to 1. And remember, notice how the equal sign is done. So these are the conditions. And they could be separated by comma, and they could be separated by, or they could be, we could have an ampersand symbol to combine them. And so this result will give us exactly what we did in the first case. And here is just like we have a condition that is an and, we could also use a condition that is an or. For example, if we wanted to select all the flights that have a unique carrier, American Airways or United, then we could do this. And notice what the or symbol is. The or symbol is a pipeline, the line that you see here. And if we run this, then we get a result for all flights that have happened in the first one. In the first case was the January 1st. In the second case with all American AA or UA with their unique carriers. So the syntax is simpler and it is more efficient. Both of them you get because you have used Dplyr. Let's see one more example here. You can see the way in which the or is written. You could have more. By the way, I know now you are picking up, some of you know R quite well, some of you are picking up. Some of these things you would learn now is not just about functionalities you find in Dplyr, but also some other things that are generally available in R. So one example, one way in which you could write the or, where the airlines you're caring for was AA or United, was to have an explicit or with a pipeline. Another one is you could write this operator called ampersand in ampersand. Now you could have a character that you could spell out, and every time your flight carrier belongs to this one, it will be picked, is what this one is saying, and it will give the same answer as what the previous one gave you. So it's an alternative way to write the or. All right, that was filter. Filter did subset of rows selected when you have satisfied or you have specified what criteria needs to be met. You could similarly think a situation in which you would want to pick columns. That means you've got a data frame, you've got a data set, and you would want to not the entire thing to be displayed, but certain variables out of it to be picked and to be selected. So maybe you wanted to inspect them, maybe you wanted to manipulate further with other data set that you would get, but you're not interested in all of the variables. You want to select some columns. So just like row selection was a filter, you have filtered your data set. Now you could select among the variables you have the ones that are of interest to you. This is very similar to what select does in SQL. Those of you who are in database would know these ones. So let's now, we're going to work with this same data set again, flights. And let's say we're interested in finding out the departure time, the arrival time, and the flight number, nothing else. If we were to do this in standard R, we would start with flights. We've got the parentheses, the square brackets, and then we have the rows. They will all be selected, and that's why you have empty, and then you have a colon, a comma, and then you have the variables that you would want to select, and you can list them, like what is shown here. This is the way to do it in standard R. How would you do this in Dplyr? You would write the word select, you open parentheses, the normal parentheses, not the square brackets, and then you write the name of the data frame, in this case flights, and then you start listing the column names you want to pick: departure time, arrival time, and flight number. So you can see this is more readable, but I emphasize again, it's not just about readability, but it also becomes faster when you do it using Dplyr. The reason for it is because it has got inbuilt in it some clever ways to run code in more efficiently and things like that, including reuse of variables inside and things like that. That's why the efficiency is coming, readability and efficiency. So we have select, and then we write the name of the data frame and whatever it is that we want to select. Let me quickly run this one and show you what the results are. And here we have, among the flights, we wanted to pick the arrival time and the departure time, and there we get the result. I'm sure I'm running the code that I was supposed to show you the next time. So let me do this. This is the one. This is the arrival time and the departure time. The next one, which I run now, I went ahead of myself, is where we wanted to do more. We could, for example, have some other conditions where we are saying the first one was a very simple select. This is some other conditions in which we wanted to have multiple columns, some things that are contiguous. And so if you wanted to start from something and end something, instead of listing them all, if they are contiguous, then you could have a colon. And that's what this one is, this example is showing you. So we started from year, day of month, and then we wanted to pick something that contains taxi, something that contains delay. Just like the ampersand symbol and in was an alternative for or, and you had things that would contain it, would belong to those picked. There is also a word called contains that you could use. There is also a word called ends with, starts with. These are all things that you could use to select or to specify criteria. And here is a convenient way to write a function name, select the data frame that you work with, and whatever criteria that you are putting to select variables. Filter was row selection. Select is colon selection. The syntax is the same. We have the two verbs, we have the data frame and the criteria. In the case of a row, what needs to be satisfied. In the case of a colon, which variables are going to be selected. And there you can get very sophisticated in what you need to specify. You following me along? Fine? All right. I'm going to stop the tour about the verbs. Remember, we've got 5 to work with. Hopefully we'll get through them all today, or if we need to use the last one, save it for next time, that should be okay. But I'm going to show you another thing that is Dplyr connected, but not necessarily only about Dplyr. And this is related because we're talking about readability of a code. There is a nice, convenient way in R where you can chain things, or you can pipeline things. So for example, if you were to pick, and I'm going to show you first the standard, just like the Dplyr functions, select and filter were shown with the standard R and how you would do it with Dplyr. For this functionality called chaining or pipelining, I'm going to show you how you do things if you were to do the standard R way and the convenient way. So suppose we were interested in having to select unique carriers and departure delay columns. And then after we select this, we wanted to filter. So there is select and there is filter that's happening. After we do this, we want to filter for delays over 60 minutes. By now, you must have one gone in your mind, especially if the kind of things that you work with in your research would come, what you are doing is now manipulation. So the first two verbs have showed you a way to filter rows, a way to select columns. But there are times when you do want to do both. And so you're manipulating your data. You're getting to what you want out of it. You're exploring it. You are going to combine it with others and things like that, right? And so here is a situation where you have a need for both of them, and see how the way to write this piece of code would have been in standard R. What do I want to do? I want to select from flights, unique carrier and departure. I selected those. And then I want to filter. So I'm going to read outside of that bracket and read to filter. And then what am I filtering it on? Departure delay. And the condition I'm giving it is more than 60. Let's say the departure delay was more than 60 minutes. So it was too long. This is what it is doing. So there's a lot of back and forth that's going on in this line of code. And the convenient way to write, a more readable way to write it, is using this chaining. And that chaining is obtained by ampersand, the greater symbol, and another sign. And the way to read it will be more to call it like then. So here is how the line, this is broken into 3 lines, but it doesn't have to be broken into 3 lines. You can actually write it in one, but it is easier to see it this way. So we're working with the flights data frame. What are we going to do? In the flights data frame, we are going to select unique carrier and departure delay. So that select is now applied to filters, is what it means. So the ampersand, the greater symbol now has given me the data frame to work with, the operation I'm going to do. And then the result of this is going to be filtered by looking at the departure delay that's greater than 60. So it's very readable. Now you don't have to go back and forth, and it's very easy to make mistakes in the standard way that I have shown you, but this one would give you the right results. So I'm going to just show you so that you'd be convinced that this does what it's supposed to do. And so I have selected the unique carriers, and the departure delay greater than 60 is chosen, and here is the result that you would get. That's called chaining. A way to read it will be to call it then. That will be a convenient way to read it. This one doesn't require Dplyr. It comes with mutate is what it is called, the library that contains it, and it gets installed with the standard R and doesn't need to have Dplyr in it. This symbol, this operator, convenient one, does not have to always be working with Dplyr. You could work it with other functions. And here's a little simple example that tries to work with 2 vectors. I'll call them x1 and x2, and you're going to find the Euclidean distance between these 2. You know, Euclidean distance, if you need a reminder, is you've got vectors, and so you take component by component, you take the difference, you square it, and then you get the square root of that. That's the Euclidean distance between the 2 vectors. So here's the code that would do for 2 vectors called x1 and x2. The first one has got numbers 1 to 5, the second one's got numbers 2 to 6, and you are finding the Euclidean distance. How do you do it? You take the sum of, you take the difference between them, you square them, you take the sum, and then you take the square root. So you see how backward you read this indentation of function calls. When you write this using the chaining method, you would do it more or less like you would have done naturally for yourself. So you've got the 2 numbers, you square them, then you take the sum. Remember now, the result of this one is going to be piped into the function that you're going to call next, in this case, sum. Now you've got a result. Now you chain it, and you get the square root of that result, and that will be your Euclidean distance. That was chaining. That was a side issue. We did cover our 2 verbs, select and filter, or filter and select, and we're going to talk about now something called arrange. And I hope you are with me. And so if you need to relax your hands, you can do that. We're not going to make through all 5 of our verbs, but at least we will take the 3rd one. This one is called arrange. And this one has to do with reordering of rows. So we're working with data frames. That means we have sometimes a need to reorder the rows depending on certain criteria. For example, we wanted to sort them. We want them to sort by arrival times. We want to sort them by how delayed they were. And so the data frame was constructed by data that was read for some reason. And so it's usually in actual things that you would know, that data will be populated as it comes along. And sometimes you want to rearrange them to sort them. And that is what the word arrange does. It would reorder the rows based on the criteria that you would give. So you could do this in standard R, and you could do this in Dplyr. The first one, I would show you how to do this in standard R. There is a function called order that would take a data frame and order them either in ascending or descending order. And that would be your tool for doing this in standard R. So let's say we wanted to select our, unique carriers and departure delays and to sort them by departure delay. So we have the flights data frame to work with. We are going to order which variable are we going to use for that? In flights, we're going to use departure delay, the $ symbol. We have ordered it, and we have chosen the unique carrier and departure delay as the things to be displayed, and we are applying this to the data frame called flights. That is the standard way to do it, the standard R way to do it. In Dplyr, here's how you would go. And now we are going to be using that chaining I just introduced. Our data frame is flights. We take it, then we select unique carrier and departure flight. These are the two columns we select. And so now we've got a data frame that is now only about 2 columns. And now we arrange, which will be the one that will reorder the rows based on Dplyr. Much easier to write, and it will be faster to run also. I'm going to run this one, not the standard one. If you wanted to see for yourself, you can run this and find out that it does exactly the same thing. So now it has arranged this one. You actually have a way, if you wanted to order this in a different or in the opposite order. This is an ascending. If you wanted it to be the default one, if you wanted it to be the descending order, you can force it by having to use the parameter descend before you apply arrange, which is what is shown in the next piece of code that you see here. So if I do that, the same command, arrange, but this time, before the variable name, we use this keyword disk, which means descending, and that will give us the order in a different direction. I have only 1 minute left, so I'm going to stop here. But mutate is an easy one. It's adding a variable. I'm going to maybe let you read on your own, but the summarize is what I would spend more time on, and we'll talk about IDR, but it is only 1 minute to 10. So this is the place where I would have to stop. Some of the minutes we got stolen because I did not know how to tell you guys your grades on Blackboard. I'll find out that and get back to you. But this is what I wanted. Did you follow me along? Okay, please be sure to read through this, at least to the point where we came. The mutate part is easy. You can get it on your own. But summarize we'll spend some time on next time, and we'll pick up on IDR from then on. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and I will see you on Wednesday. And by then you would have heard me about your assignment grades, assignment 1 grades. All right, see you next time.